Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, Coach Sark, Texas, wrapping up their second scrimmage of fall camp. And two things right off the bat. We got a lot of emerging difference makers, it sounds like, on this roster. Dill, this team is incredibly deep. Like, every time I sit down and read some fall camp intel, it's just more names that are buzzing, more names that are emerging as difference makers. You talk about the reason that I'm picking Texas to win a national championship in 2025. Yeah, Arch Manning has a lot to do with it. Dill, good teams have good football players. Great teams have good football players, but they're also really deep. Now, I'll look at Texas going into 2025 and say this is not only one of the most talented football teams we see in the country, if not the most talented, it's also one of the deepest teams in the country as well. The amount of difference makers littered in this roster, the amount of difference makers that are in the 2 and 3 deep, absolutely insane for this football team. Fired up to get into this one. A lot of names to mention before we get into it. As always, the Texas fans, appreciate you guys. Been a really busy summer talking this football team on the recruiting trail in fall camp. The amount of support many of y'all have shown the boy has been amazing. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, the storyline for me, and this has been a bubbling storyline throughout fall camp, but especially after this second scrimmage, CJ Baxter is back, and it's going to be really important for Texas in 2025.
And that is one thing. I feel like as much as we perceive Texas like this juggernaut running the ball, like, yes, they were good against probably their bottom half of their schedule, but in those big moments in the games against Georgia and Ohio State, like, they didn't run the ball as consistently as you'd probably like to, especially with the offensive line that they had. And I do think a lot of that was like they probably were missing that like true bell cow number one back. And Trey Wisner has a skill set that's going to be very effective in this offense. Like, you look at what Jaden Blue did to Ohio State, catching the ball out of the backfield. Wisner's probably got to be that guy for Texas this year. So he has a huge role in this offense. He's not the running back CJ Baxter is as a pure ball carrier. So getting him back and having Sark trust him to like give him the ball 20 plus times a game, I do think is huge.
That's what perked my ears up the most. You know, I kind of had a feeling CJ Baxter, if there's anybody that can recover from the injury, it's probably going to be CJ Baxter. Kid's absolutely freak show. What fired me up the most was Coach Sark coming out of the scrimmage saying, hey, we were going to be cautious with him. We ain't going to be cautious anymore. Like he's showing us that he's ready to go going into 2025. And Dill, I could not agree with you more. And during the offseason, I've taken some heat. That this is not an anti-Trey Wisner take. He was very solid for Texas in 2024. I don't think he was a national championship caliber bell cow running back. I firmly believe that CJ Baxter is that kind of guy, especially having it sound like he's kind of back to the form that we saw as a freshman. Heck, Dill, go back to the carries that he got as a freshman. There was a reason CJ Baxter was getting the work and Trey Wisner wasn't. That's just the kind of back CJ Baxter is. The other thing I would note, running the football against really good front sevens, that's huge. Red zone, man. Like Texas, Dill, it's crazy because Texas was like the second best team in the country at the end of the year, right? I don't think anybody arguing that. They were 111th in red zone scoring last year. You want to win a national championship, you can't be outside the top 100. You get Arch Manning and the legs that he can bring to this offense, especially inside the 20. Now you add CJ Baxter. Dill, I would expect Texas to be significantly better scoring touchdowns in the red zone than what they were last year. And CJ Baxter going to play a massive role in it. Number two, Dill, look, is this a crazy take or not? I've been kind of hinting at it throughout the offseason. Are these pass catchers going to be just as good, if not better, for Texas in 2025 in comparison to what they were in 2024? The more buzz we hear from these freshmen, the more I'm leaning towards this could be a better wide receiver room in 2025 than what we saw in the 2024 year.
And that has been, I mean, Ryan Wingo probably has been the story, and he will be the story because you talk about him as being the number one guy. I think that is what he's destined to be for this Texas team, and I think his talent level is probably about as high as you've seen at Texas in the Steve Sarkisian era. So he's still the guy, but I do look at like maybe being a little bit more diverse in skill sets through that room is probably the big thing. Because again, you go back to that red zone conversation, having a couple of big wide receivers who are better with the ball in the air, like that is kind of what it sounds like Cleve Lockett's role is starting to like shape into a little bit. Because Livingstone's going to play a lot, and like I don't know, I don't even know how you judge like him as the starter or Cleve Lockett as the starter because both those guys are playing. But I do like the fact that you're seeing some more skill sets emerge because last year the wideouts were just kind of on the small side for the most part in terms of the guys who were playing for Tech.
Yeah, sure. I would, well, outside of Gunnar Helm, like you didn't have a ton of really big pass catchers, and you're trying to replace the Gunnar Helm presence. I think you did that with Jack Andrews, but I think you also can do that with the cat like Khalil Lockett. That's a really good point. A lot of diversity in this wide receiver room. Dill, probably a lot more wide receivers that will play for Texas in 2025 as well. Again, you're talking about, 5-star wide receivers in the 2 and 3 deep here. And that's the one position where even as a freshman, you can get on the football field. We saw it a bunch last year. I would expect a lot of these freshmen to play big time roles. And I mean, let's talk about the bugaboo. Like the only thing that has me sweating regarding my national championship pick being Texas, the offensive line getting a little bit thin. Like, number one, you have to replace both your tackles, and then you have one of your top 3 tackles go down with an injury in fall camp. I mean, I was reading through the fall camp notes, the scrimmage notes, and Trevor Gooseby went down. It sounds like it was non-significant, would have went back in if it was a real game. That's the kind of nervous situation we're in, right? I mean, you got Trevor Gooseby, Brandon Baker, you're kind of starting tackles. You have Jaden Chapman being your number 3. It sounds like he looked pretty good in the scrimmage, though, which I think is big news for Texas. We're thin there, but we have guys stepping up. What's your, I guess I'll put it on you like this. Well, what's your expectation of this offensive line in the 2025 year?
I mean, the starting 5 is big time. That'll be one of like a
so
top
too.
10 unit in all the country, I
so
would
too.
think. Like, especially if Brandon Baker, you hear some things about penalties and maybe like, again, he's kind of one I certainly expect to figure out. He has all the physical traits.
Yes.
I thought in his spot duty last year in kind of reserve role, you even saw it. So I feel good about him as much as maybe I've heard some things about some inconsistencies that I suppose you'd expect for a younger player. Jaden Chapman might be like the most important player on this team.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm thinking like of how Texas like can raise their floor, if you will, and not be so reliant on like, well, God, if Gooseby has to miss a game and Baker has to miss a game, like the things fall off a little bit. Jaden Chapman, to me, that versatility to be a guy who can kick out from being mostly a guard or interior guy for Texas. It sounds like, again, like he will see the best pass rushers in the country when he goes and plays Texas in a scrimmage. Because like Colin Simmons, he's bar none the best pass rusher in my mind. It sounds like he plays well. If he can do that, you don't really have questions about this Texas team. Can get it done? Is the question.
Can Jaden Chapman be what Trevor Gooseby was last year for Texas?
Exactly.
Like, look, Trevor Gooseby had to play some big time moments against some big time edge rushers and came in and was rock solid. Can Jaden Chapman be that kind of guy? I think that's a really good point. How deep are we is the question. But Dale, you said it best. The starting 5 should be really good. Like if Texas can stay healthy, and it should be a good starting 5. Defensive side of the football, Dale, this is where you really start to appreciate this team. And my continue to be my biggest takeaway is that it sounds like we're really, really happy with the defensive linemen we grabbed through the transfer portal. And the biggest surprise for me, like hearing good things about Murad Watson and all that surprising, thought we were going to hear good things. Hero Kanu, I didn't know what to expect. Like, this is a guy that sparingly saw the field at Ohio State, was a kid that was relatively new to the sport at the high school ranks, knew he was gifted, just wasn't sure if it was going to come together. Texas took the risk. It sounds like we might be getting the best version of Hero Kanu that we've seen throughout this kid's career. That's huge for Texas because we don't need to be elite in the middle of the defensive line. In fact, I don't know if we'll be elite in the middle of the defensive line. But if we can be solid there and let the rest of this front 7 kind of do the production, that's big. And it sounds like we're getting exactly what we needed from Hero Kanu coming into 2025.
Because from like an athletic and trade standpoint, he's probably the best guy in that room. I mean, just like pure raw Like
maybe
him
Josh
and Alex
Sarah.
January, to me, are probably fighting it out for that title, if you will. And Hirokano, again, a guy who, because even when he was on the field at Ohio State, you didn't see quite enough. Like it just didn't feel
not even
comfortable
close.
out there. He wasn't playing particularly fast, but you knew, like, just looking at what he can do athletically, he could be so good if he could put it together. And I'm kind of with you. Like, if we just heard like one practice, oh, Hirokano is a monster, and then like radio silence,
Yeah.
well, that's when you get into like, oh, well, I guess like I'd probably question that, but like it has been pretty much week after week for the past couple of weeks of fall camp, and that would be an exciting one because him at full strength, if you will, or reaching his ceiling,
Yeah.
would be a problem.
To put it bluntly about the potential of Hirokano, this kid was a blue chip recruit coming out of high school. I believe only playing 2 years of high school football. That tells you the upside that he brings to the table. Can he find that upside in 2025 is one of the bigger storylines for this defense. Still, Brad Spence making plays. You talk about depth. I mean, we're trying to figure out how to get Trey Moore on the football field. We're trying to figure out how to get Brad Spence on the football field. We obviously can't really take off Anthony Hill at all. How Texas goes about organizing this front seven and how they use some of these cats, it's an embarrassment of riches. I don't get paid the big bucks to figure out how to maximize these football players. If Texas can do that in 2025, kind of going back to the storyline of, look, over the last 2 years, Texas has been able to really lean on their interior defensive linemen to dominate football games and be very productive. Even if you don't have that kind of production in 2025, you're going to get it from other areas in this front seven. And you have, I mean, a guy like Brad Spence is going to be a problem. He's making plays in the scrimmage. I don't even know if he's going to be in the two deep. That kind of tells you how deep this football team is, specifically with your weapons in the front seven here.
In Brad Spence and Trey Moore might be like one of the more interesting like two players in the country, because I look with the way Texas kind of positioned, they're not top line starters for Texas. Like, especially with Leofau's, like, it seems like emergence as like a guy who they don't want to take off the field much.
Yep.
You got two guys who both, I think, can play either position, off ball or off the edge. Both, I mean, Trey Moore, like, I know they want to play him off the ball, but he probably needs to rush the passer something.
He has to, man. He has to. I know that he might project as an off-ball backer more at the next level. He is way too good rushing the passer not to give him those opportunities in 2025. I don't know who you're going to take off the football field to get Trey Moore on the field. That's certainly a question mark.
And like vice versa, Brad Spence, like you saw him do both those at a high level at Arkansas. Now, Brad Spence, I kind of wonder, like, is he great enough at either of them to be a huge contributor, not just a situational contributor for Texas, but like athletically, there's something there. Like, and you've seen him be a chase and tackle linebacker, and you've seen him, especially in the run game, play really good on the edge, being able to chase down the backside. So I'm fascinated by what they do with those two, because you want to get both of them on the field, but like, yeah, what are you taking? You're not taking off Simmons.
Yeah, definitely not that. Even if they are just situational guys. I mean, that one tells you how good this football team is, because I'll tell you this, Trey Moore and Brad Spence are starting for like 90% of college football rosters in 2025. That's okay. Like, if you're Texas, you're just trying to find the 1%. Right? How can we just be 1% of a better football team than what we were in 2024? And we are in the thick of it, if not the favorites, to win a national championship. So even if it's only 20 snaps a game for each of these two cats, but you're putting them in really good positions to be successful, that's okay. They'll early look ahead to Ohio State. You know, we're learning about Texas. We're learning about Ohio State during fall camp. What matchup excites you the most for Texas going on the road week 1 in Columbus?
I mean, it's probably, can they establish the run against a really good team? And I'm not like
really good team, but
convinced Ohio State's interior defensive line is what they want it to be. I know you saw them sniffing around portal guys, went hard for Murad Watson, who Texas was able to take from him.
Yeah.
So that's still a big thing, because I do think that's how Texas gets over some of those issues they've had in big games. I mean, it's really hard to beat a team like Georgia if you're not running the ball at all against that team. So that's probably what I'm looking at. If they run the ball really well and CJ Baxter looks like he's the CJ Baxter we knew from his freshman year, I'm like all aboard the Texas Express to a national title.
Yeah, I And that's what you want to do, man. Like, I know Arch Manning is very capable of going out there and winning you that football game on his back. You don't want him to have to do that,
Not
especially
against
against
Ohio
the
State, because Ohio
secondary.
State's secondary is awesome.
I agree that I firmly believe Ohio State's defensive line is nowhere close to what we saw in the 2024 year. In fact, that was the biggest storyline that nobody ever talked about. Everybody talked about Jeremiah Smith. Just ask Coach Sark, ask that Texas offensive line. That was a handful of a defensive line, and I don't think they'll be close. Can you go take advantage, especially early in the season? What fires me up, Dill, you went from trying to chase down a 6'5", 240-pound quarterback in Will Howard to a 6'1", might be generous, 200 pounds, might be generous quarterback in Julian Sain. I just read in the fall camp intel, I should say the scrimmage report, Texas was getting their hands on a lot of footballs. You probably feel like you can do that against Julian Sain in that football game as well, because Julian Sain ain't that big. Can they get after him? Because look, Julian Sain, Texas was able to be disruptive against Will Howard, but Will Howard was a little bit of a good athlete. That's what made him tricky to deal with, getting outside the pocket, tough to bring down, getting involved in the quarterback run game. If you can affect Julian Sain the same way you did Will Howard last year, it's going to be a lot more effective, because guess what? Julian Sain ain't running away from Colin Simmons. That's probably the matchup I'm looking forward to the most, especially as, Ohio State's trying to still figure out what their starting five is going to be up front. We'll close it out there. It's going to be one of the best week one openers that we've seen in a very long time. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.